everyone, my name is Jenna, but you guys can call me Jen. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. Hi, hello. Welcome back to another sit-down video. It's been a hot second since we filmed one of these, but I have read a lot of really great books and I want to talk about them. Over the past 2 months, I have read 23 books. I'm not going to talk about all of them in detail because then we'd be here forever, but I definitely have noticed a few things about the last couple months in my reading that I wanted to kind of mention here at the top of the video, but then we'll kind of get into it. I'll share some favorites, some fails, all that good stuff. It's great. And then I'm going to share also some reading plans for the last month of the year. I cannot believe we're already here. All right, so if we look back all the way to October, I read 11 books, and in October, November, and like this later part of the year, I have noticed that I am giving out 1, 2, and like 1.5, 2.5 stars a lot more frequently than I have been over the rest of the year. Whether that's because I'm actually reading the books and refusing to put them down and DNF them more than I was doing in the beginning of the year, or whether that's because the books are actually just not as good as the beginning of the year, who's to say? And I can tell y'all that I've also only read 1 5-star in the past 2 months, not counting a reread of Gideon the Ninth, which was also a 5-star. So 2 technically, but 1 brand new 5-star. It's been an interesting couple months. We're gonna dive into it. I should also say at the top of this video, I had 1 DNF in October, and I can't remember if I DNF'd anything in November. There was another one in November. So the physical copy I DNF'd The Death of Mrs. Westaway, and a library copy that I DNF'd was The Spells for Forgetting by Adrienne Young. Besides that, as you guys may know, or if you're new here, you may not know, or if you frequent my TikTok, you will know that I am on a little bit of a reading challenge for this last part of the year when I realized how many books I had bought when my birthday came around and how willy-nilly I was being with my money. I decided to go on a book buying ban until the end of the year, which I'm still on. I did break it ever so slightly to get a Palestinian book, but that's it, that's all. I have been on that book buying ban religiously, and honestly, it's going okay. There have been many moments where I've almost broke it for a good deal, but then I was like, no, Jen, you gotta stick to your book buying ban just for your own sanity. But I have been on a mission to shrink my TBR, which at that point was 155 books, and I wanted to shrink it down to what I had started the year at or more, which I believe was 120 something. Let me just pull up my bullet journal here. 122 books. I wrote it at the beginning of my bullet journal. I raised it an incredible amount through all the book buying that I've done this year. So I was like, okay, we're gonna halt the book buying and we're just gonna read a bunch of books. And so far I've read 18 physical books off of my TBR, and we've shrunk my TBR to 138 books, whilst still getting a few pre-orders and still reading a lot of library books as well. These are some of they are upside down for you, I'm so sorry. Hold on, there we go. These are the physical books off my TBR that I read in October, and I also read a bunch of library books in October as well, but we're just gonna kind of get into some of the highlights of the month. There were a number of big disappointments this month, namely these bad boys right here. Or not Borders. I don't really care about Borders. It's a graphic novel depiction of a short story that I read back in university, and the graphic novel is beautiful, but I've read it before. It's not that amazing. It's just a short story, and sometimes short stories are hit and miss with me, so. But these were the disappointments. I don't know if I held up Night Film previously, but we had some interesting lows with this month. Night Film started off really, really great, and then the last part of the book absolutely ruined it for me, and it like didn't tell us the mystery, which makes me so mad because it was such a thick, heavy book for nothing. Thornhedge was a little bit of disappointment. I feel like I've read all of the good T. Kingfisher books with my 3 5-stars during this year, but it was still fine. It was just fine. It's a fairy tale retelling, and then One Dark Window was just, I don't get the hype. I really don't. Some amazings from this month were Badc and Son of a Sailor by Marshall J. Moore, and also Squire and Minor Detail. So I'm going to save a lot of the Palestinian books for its own little section because I did read a few also in November, so we'll talk about those in a second. But for my physical TBR, amazing books. Son of a Sailor is a pirating cozy fantasy that centers around grief. It's about Captain Redbeard who goes home when he finds out that his father has passed away. He goes home. It's just this moment of trying to keep his pirating persona secret from his family, from his mom specifically, and then all the people that he grew up with. And it's his new crew coming in and meeting his family and stuff like that. It was wonderfully done. I really, really enjoyed this, and I highly recommend it if you're looking for a lovely, cozy fantasy to sink your teeth into. For badc, this was exceptional. I read this over Halloween weekend, and oh, it was so good. It was fan-fucking-tastic. If you're looking for a horror book that isn't actually like super scary like most horror books are, if you're a little bit more of a scaredy cat, but you want to try something that has a little bit of tension in it, has a little sprinkling of magical realism, but really has a ton of heart and family and coming back from loneliness at the heart of it, this is what you want to pick up. So badc is a story about Mackenzie, who at the beginning of this is grieving the loss of her sister and has moved away from her family, is kind of isolated from her family, but she has been recently receiving these very weird, meaningful dreams where she's actually bringing physical elements of the dreams back with her. And so she has to reconnect with her family and discover what's going on with these dreams. And it was fantastic. We love to see it, honestly. Like, I couldn't put it down. It was amazing. The library books that I read this month were Venco, Once and Future Witches, Squire, Minor Detail, and In the Company of Witches. So there was a very witchy month and also just a very interesting month, but none of them really stood out except for the Palestinian books, which, as I said, I will talk about in a bit. But let's move on to November. So as I'm filming this, it is currently November 29th. I might be finishing another book tonight, depending. Is it the 29th? No, it's the 30th. So I have tonight to finish another book if I'm going to. If not, it'll be in the December books. So we'll see. But that one, the one that I'm currently reading is Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky, and it's a very interesting sci-fi. But other than that, I have read 12 books in the month of November, and we've had some pretty interesting reads. There are a number of library books as well that I have read this month that have already gone back to the library, but these are the physical books that I read this month that I have my hands on, which a little bit more substantial than in October. We had a lot of big tomes this month. So this is kind of what it looked like, plus a number of other library books that I don't have in my hands anymore. And also a copy of Gideon the Ninth, which is still with my friend Sophia. I really need to get my copy back from her now that I bought her own copy. So I also reread Gideon the Ninth, which was amazing, and also the settling and solidifying of my favorite book of all time, because Gideon the Ninth is superior. And God, I love that book so much. I love the book so much. It took 3 read-throughs for me to solidify it as my favorite book of all time, but it is there and I love it so much. I think that book series is just made for rereading, because the more you reread, the more you realize and understand about the books, and Tamsin Muir's writing is just incredible. All right, so some highlights of this month, other than rereading Gideon the Ninth, I did also start into series number 4 with the City of Brass trilogy. I'm 2 down, I have 1 to go, which is currently sitting on my coffee table. I am really happy that I decided to do this for the next set of series. I also have Foundry Side and this duology lined up next. I think I might be doing the duology next because it is only 2 books, and we'll see if I can do this reread and then read quick in December so that I can also maybe slot in Foundry Side in January. That could be great. But these are the next 2 that I'm going to be doing for my series videos, in case you were wondering. That's a total side tangent, but I did start reading through these. I gave City of Brass 4 stars and Kingdom of Copper 4.5 stars. Kingdom of Copper was such a ride. Like, other than Gideon the Ninth, I think it was my favorite book of November. It was so good. Oh my God, just an absolute ride, if you will. I also ended up starting my read through of the Liv Ship Traders trilogy with The Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb, which is fantastic. So glad that I was in the mood for this, and I will hopefully be continuing with this series in December with the second book as well. I had a number of real bad ones. Or not real bad ones, just like kind of just disappointing reads, 2 and 3-star reads this month. A number of them were library books, so it doesn't really bode to talking about because I don't have them with me right now. But I think the biggest quote-unquote disappointment of the month was probably Ordinary Monsters by J.M. Miro. I had this one slotted out to be a 5-star. I had this one slotted out to be like a perfect November atmospheric read. It really was not. It was a hot mess of a book. The plot was everywhere. It was like the author decided to put everything he could think of for this story and throw it at a wall, and that wall was this book. So it needed some replotting, it needed some tightening, it needed something to make it better and more streamlined. It was a lot, but it wasn't bad. Like, I still gave it 3 stars, but it was a mess. It was a mess, and I was hoping that was gonna be a 5-star. It's kind of like the overview of the books that I have read this month. But as I said, I did want to talk about the Palestinian books that I've read this month, or these past 2 months, because they are also, all of them are recommendations from me to you that you should be picking up, because also, as of yesterday when I'm filming this, the 29th, it was, oh gosh, my brain is only telling me like the Independence Day for Palestine, but I'm going to put the specific title for the Palestine Day as of the 29th. And there is also a reading for Palestine for this next week until the 2nd of December, I believe. Could be wrong. I'll correct myself on the screen. That is happening. A nice readathon. So if you want some recommendations for that as well, I got some. So as I mentioned, back in October, I read 2. I read Minor Detail and Squire. And Squire, we'll talk about first. Squire is my new favorite graphic novel of all time. Was so fucking good. It isn't fantasy, but it feels like a fantasy book. It has like a flavor of a trial book. It has a flavor of a war YA fantasy, you know, those war-centered books where likes are sent away to train at this school kind of a thing. It had that vibe. The art was absolutely stunning. And as someone who likes graphic novels enough, but doesn't usually find them enough of a story, this was perfect. It was so well plotted, so well paced. I feel like I didn't need anything more in any aspect of it. It was just perfect. It was a perfect graphic novel, hence why it is my favorite graphic novel of all time. I cannot wait to get my hands on a physical copy when my book buying ban is over. This is on my list. It's number 1 for me to get. I loved this book. Truly. It was beautiful. Beautiful, gorgeous. And I will be rereading it when I have my hands on a physical copy. What can I tell you about it? It is about a young girl who wants to become a squire, and she is of a people who are incredibly oppressed. So when she finally convinces her parents to let her become a squire and go through squire training, she hides who she is. She hides her nationality so that she can kind of fit in a little better and she won't have her life in danger. And then she makes some friends and she makes some enemies, and it's this, wonderful, wonderful story of her going through squire training. It is also incredibly nuanced with racism and the idea of the oppressed, the oppressor, of colonialism. It's beautiful, and it's this opening up of this young protag's mind as to what war really is and what world she lives in. Minor Detail by Adania Shibley we'll talk about next. This one was also really, really good. I have been meaning to get my hands on a copy. I have ordered this book twice and had the order canceled twice because it is on back order everywhere right now. So I'm going to try order it again in the new year so that I can get my hands on it and reread it, because I want to reread this and annotate this and really just sink my teeth into it to really fall into this story. I don't remember exactly what I rated it. I think it was a 4-star. Yeah, I gave it 4 stars, and Squire was 5, if that wasn't any indication. But Minor Detail ended up being 4 stars, but I think upon reread, I could even get a higher rating of mine because I want to really just sink my teeth into it and see how beautiful of a book it is. So this is a book that follows 2 different POVs, or 2 different parts. It's a novella as well, so it's very tiny, but this little novella packs such a punch. The first part follows a IDF soldier 25 years before the events of the second half of the book. So the first part is narrated in a very broken, spaced out style, third person, following this IDF soldier as he is bit by a spider, a bug of some kind that poisons him very, very slowly. And he's like he's just basically walking around with like a festering wound the whole time. It's disgusting. It's that, as he's also committing these terrible war crimes. Him and his platoon are committing terrible war crimes against a Bedouin girl, a Palestinian girl. And then the second part is 25 years later, as I said, where a Palestinian journalist finds out about this story and becomes obsessed with figuring out the truth and finding out more about this seemingly minor detail in the history of Palestine. Oh, this whole book is just a masterpiece. Like, the literary student in me was screaming the whole time because she was so excited about how wonderful this book was. Like, just the craft of it alone is incredible. And that's not even considering any of the actual content. And the content is so hard-hitting, but so well done. Please read this. Then this month, I also read a number of Palestinian books as well. First up, I read Against the Loveless World by Susan Abul Hawa, which is a story about Nar, who is sharing her life story from a IDF solitary confinement cell. Oh, this book is a lot. This book is so heartbreaking, but also so full of love and hope and life and humanity and all the errors that come with being human. And it's just, wow. So Nar grows up at the beginning. She's in Kuwait, I do believe. It doesn't say on the back, but she's not in Palestine at the beginning. She is a child of a refugee family. Throughout the book, she ends up going to Palestine and falling in love with Palestine for the first time, and also being displaced and undergoing so many different atrocities. And please look up trigger warnings, but please read this. It is so important, because I've said this many times. This book has taught me more than pretty much every single one of my textbooks that I read in university. Like, this book, absolutely incredible. I also read The Book of Disappearance by Ibtisam Azem this month. Also, Against the Loveless World, I gave 4 stars. The Book of Disappearance by Ibtisam Azem, I gave 3.5 stars, but this is another one, like Minor Detail. This one's a very little book, but I think if I reread it, the rating will go up. Like, I want to like reread it and like study it. It's another one that I just want to keep living in, reread it, and really get my mind wrapped around it. It was a thought-provoking book. So the Book of Disappearance follows mainly 2 POVs. There are other ones in there, but 2 POVs. One of them is through a journal of a Palestinian man who's speaking directly to his grandma, and his name is Allah, A-L-A-A, and also his Israeli neighbor, Ariel. This book asks the question, what would happen if all the Palestinians in Israel disappeared one day? And it asks that, and then it's the 48 hours after this disappearance, and we only get Palestinian voices through Allah's journal. Everything else, every other voice in this book is Israeli, which is very interesting because you get all the points of view. You get all of the points of view of this disappearance, of their opinions about Palestinians, all of that. It is a really interesting deconstruction of Ariel, the Israeli neighbor's ideas of the world that he lives in. He is also a journalist, so he's like trying to keep abreast of this issue and writing about this issue of the disappearance and all this kind of stuff. It was very interesting. Again, like Minor Detail, I'm gonna get my hands on a copy and reread it and annotate it, because I think I just need to know more, you know? I need to study these books, because they're that kind of book that just, they're so little, but they're so packed with just incredible mastery and yeah, this one only got 3.5 stars though, because I did have issues with the writing. It is translated from Arabic, but it wasn't translated very well. There are many sentences that don't make sense, and a lot of the writing was kind of choppy and a little hard for me to get through. But other than that, it was great. I have also been reading a little bit of nonfiction. As you guys know, I'm not really a nonfiction girly. I find them so difficult to get through and just really dry and not very fun and not very, I don't like reading them at all. But I did pick up, and I have been reading, so this is one that I'm currently reading. I'm currently reading The 100 Years War on Palestine by Rashid Khalidi, or Khalidi. I'm not entirely sure how to say his name. I do apologize. That one I'm currently reading. I'm treating it as a podcast, so I'm listening to it in like 30 to 45 minute sprints while I'm making dinner, and I am enjoying this. I am learning a whole heck of a lot. So it covers the past 100 years of the Israeli occupation in Palestine through 6 big events. I'm also following the creator Sim Kern, both on Instagram and TikTok, and they are producing, or releasing, I guess, videos where they kind of dissect each of the chapters and like do an overview of what each of the chapters are talking about, which is fantastic for my brain, which forgets things very, very easy. So I like to go and watch Sims videos once I'm done the chapter or just starting the chapter to like introduce myself to what I'm going to be reading. I'm really kind of getting myself into it and remembering these events that have happened and that kind of stuff. So very important read. I definitely recommend this. But another book that I read this month, another nonfiction that I read this month in its entirety is On Palestine by Noam Chomsky and Ilan Pappé, edited by Frank Barrett. This one was a little interesting to me. I don't know if I really recommend this, but it is something that people are recommending. So take that as you will. This one I didn't really enjoy the read of. It wasn't like a typical textbook nonfiction kind of a thing that you'd read with lots of information. It's more of a discussion between three men who are given all these questions by Frank Barrett, the editor, and they talk about the issues of the occupation in Palestine, solutions that could come up with, all this like history of it, like what the reasons for is. It's a very interesting discussion, but it wasn't something that I found particularly helpful for me. It was fine. It was a fine read, and as someone who doesn't read nonfiction, it really wasn't for me, but I did want to mention it here because it is still a very interesting conversation and it brings up some very interesting questions. I do have 2 more books on my TBR that I'm going to be hopefully getting to. One of them is here that I'm definitely going to be getting to this week because this weekend coming up, I'm doing a sci-fi reading vlog, and this is included in it. This is The Sentient by Nadia Afifi, who is an Arab American author, and this book was recommended to me through my library because my library has this fun thing where you can like sign up to receive 5 recommendations kind of a thing. This was one of them. And it is also included on a list of speculative fiction Palestinian authors that I cannot remember the name of the creator. If I can find it and if I can remember it, I will put it on the screen, but this is on that list as well. So this is why I picked it up and I'm excited to get to it. I don't really know anything about it other than the fact that it is set in 2227 and I love sci-fi, so I'm gonna read it. And this cover is really cool looking. I like it. And I also have an Etaf Room book, A Woman Is No Man. I could be wrong about that title, but this is a audiobook that I could find on my Libby app that was ready and available for me to read. I've heard wonderful things about this author, so I'm very excited to give this a try when I can get to it. Anyways, my friends, so that is kind of the vibes. Those are the most important books that I did read this past month and all of the different things that I have been reading. It is officially, as you were saying this, it's December 1st. Happy December 1st. This month, I'm going to be releasing, as usual, my end of year content. So you're probably going to get a few extra videos from me. I have yet to really plan it all out, but I do have plans for some videos. So you will see more content from me coming up and then obviously into the new year. But if there's anything specific you want to see from me in this last little chunk of the year, please let me know and I will consider it and I will put it on my list for doing. And if I can't get to it in this month, I will probably get to it in the brand new year. But yes, let me know what you guys have been reading. It's been a little while since I've chatted with you. I'm so excited to be back, to be ready, to be making content and telling you guys about books that I think you should be reading or books that I have been reading and all my thoughts, because that's what I'm here for. If you've missed out on a lot of my weekend vlogs that have been going up, there's been a lot of talk about the books that I've been reading in those vlogs. So if you want any details about what I've talked about today, go look at them. There will be a reading vlog for the City of Brass trilogy up as soon as I finish that last one. So I actually have to get started with that one. There's going to be the sci-fi reading vlog going up on Tuesday once the weekend is over and I read a whole bunch of things. But there's also going to be, of course, 2024 releases I'm excited for, the top 10 books of 2023, some runner-ups. There's gonna be a goals video. There's gonna be a updated publishing schedule from me because I am obviously an author, if you guys know. Hi! If you didn't know, I am author J.A. Collington. I write some cozy fantasies. This is one of them. This is A Little Luck. You can't really see it. There you go, A Little Luck. Lots of things coming. It's the end of the year. So thank you guys so much for watching this video and I hope to catch you in another one soon. Stay kind and keep on reading.